Everyone says you need a track record to raise serious capital, but they are wrong. I've watched first-time sponsors raise $5 million, $10 million, no prior deals, no exits, no track record, no performance history. Of course that helps, but I've seen people do it, and I've seen people do it many times over. I've watched experienced operators with years of successful deals struggle to even raise $500,000. Track record matters, but it's not what closes investors. What closes investors is something most sponsors never think to build. And by the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly what that is and how to build it before you close a single deal. Stay with me. My name is Seth Bradley. I'm a securities attorney, founder of Raise Law, and the chief legal officer of TribeVest. I've structured over 750 funds and syndications and been part of more than $9 billion in real estate and private equity transactions. My clients, my partners, and I have collectively raised over $3 billion in private capital. I don't just see the legal documents, I see the raises, I see what works and what doesn't in real time with real money on the line when you're under contract and up against the gun. What I'm about to walk you through is not theory. It's what I've watched play out in actual raises with actual investors over more than a decade in this business. Let's get into it. Let me tell you what investors are actually evaluating when they decide whether to commit. Most sponsors think the answer is performance history, past deals, returns delivered, exits closed. The longer the track record, the stronger the raise. But that's not what investors are evaluating first. What investors are evaluating first is this. Do I believe this person can execute? And that belief doesn't come from a track record alone. It comes from the signals you send before the track record even exists, before they read about it. Think about what a track record actually does. It reduces uncertainty. It gives an investor evidence that you have done this before and delivered. That evidence is very valuable. Don't get me wrong. But uncertainty can be reduced in other ways. The right team around you reduces uncertainty. A professionally structured offering reduces uncertainty. Deep, specific knowledge of the asset class, of the deal, reduces uncertainty. A calm, confident answer to a hard question reduces uncertainty. Track record is just one of the tools for reducing investor doubt. It's not the only tool. And for a first-time sponsor, it's not even the most important one because it can't be. Let me give you two examples from my practice that illustrate exactly what I mean. I worked with a first-time sponsor. It's been a few years. No closed deals, no exits, no history whatsoever. By every conventional measure, he had no business raising institutional level capital. But he did something most first-time sponsors never do. Before he ever started talking to investors, he spent months building the room around him. He brought in a co-GP who closed 11 deals in the same asset class. He hired a PM with over 4,000 units under management in that exact market. He engaged experienced legal counsel to structure the offer correctly from day one, and he went deep on the submarket, vacancy rates, rent trends, comparable sales, until he knew that market better than most operators who had been in that same market for years. Now contrast that with a different operator I saw go through the same process at around the same time. This guy had real experience, 7 deals over 8 years, solid returns, mostly happy investors. On paper, he should have been the easier decision, the easier raise. But he showed up to every meeting alone, no co-GP, a basic operating agreement pulled from a template, projections on a spreadsheet with no formal PPM. When investors asked hard questions, he leaned entirely on his own history instead of walking them through the exact questions and the answers that they needed to have confidence in his raise. He raised about $400,000 on a deal that needed $3 million, a deal that frankly was a good one and should have closed, and he fell out of contract. The difference between those two raises was not experience, not the market, not even the deal quality. The difference was how each sponsor showed up and what they built around themselves before they ever asked for a dollar or pitched a single investor. Here's the reframe I want you to carry out of this entire video. You're not raising capital against your track record. You're raising capital against investor doubt. Those are two totally different problems, and only one of them requires years of closed deals to solve. Some of you have that, some of you don't. You either have it or you don't. So, if a track record is not the only way to reduce investor doubt, what are the others? There are 3. You can build all 3 before you close a single deal. Let's go through them. The first is borrowed credibility. If you don't have a track record, borrow one. Bring on an experienced operator as a co-GP, someone who's closed deals in your asset class and is willing to put their name and their reputation behind the project and behind you. Hire a property manager with deep experience in the specific submarket you're targeting. Add an advisor or a mentor who's operated at scale and is willing to be visible in your materials. Investors are not just evaluating you, they're evaluating the entire structure and your team that sits behind you. I hear this objection all the time from new sponsors. But Seth, I don't want to give up equity. I don't want to cut someone else in. That mindset will cost you far more in slower raises, stalled deals, and capital you never raise than any equity split ever will, especially in the early innings. The sponsors who get to scale fast are almost always the ones who are willing to give something up early to get the right people in our room. That's how you compress a decade of credibility building into a single offering. Borrow credibility, stack the room with real experience, make it impossible to miss. The second is structural credibility. A professionally structured offering signals competence before you say a word. Clean subscription documents, a well-drafted PPM, a waterfall structure that makes sense and is very clear on incentives for both you and your investors, an entity structure and org structure that's properly set up and is compliant and makes sense. When a sophisticated investor looks at your offering documents and everything is clean, it's organized, it's sharp, professionally drafted, something shifts in their mind. They stop asking whether you know what you're doing, and they start asking whether they like the deal. That shift is everything. It moves the conversation from doubt to evaluation. And evaluation is where deals get done and across the finish line. I can tell you from the legal side, I've seen 6-figure commitments walk away because the operating agreement looked like it was pulled off the internet, or today, built off of AI. And I've seen first-time sponsors close at scale because their documents were tight, their structure was sound, sophisticated investors could see that someone who knew what they were doing had set this up correctly. Do not cheap out on your legal structure. It's not a cost, it's a signal to your investors, and it's one of the cheapest credibility signals you can buy. The third is knowledge credibility. This should go without saying, but know your asset class better than anyone in the room. Know the market, know the submarket, the comparable sales, the rent trends, the vacancy rates, the supply pipeline, the job growth rate, everything, the exit cap rate assumptions, everything, why they're defensible, the specific risks in this deal, and how you've structured against each one. When you can speak to that level of depth without notes, without hesitation, without having to flip through your deck, investors feel that confidence. That command signals competence as clearly as any track record ever could, because a track record is just evidence that you knew what you were doing in the past. Deep current knowledge is evidence that you know what you're doing right now in this deal, in this market. Number 1, borrowed credibility. Number 2, structural credibility. And number 3, knowledge credibility. Build all 3. You don't need a single closed deal to do any of them. Now here's where most first-time sponsors lose the race, and they never know it happened. It's in how they answer one question. Every investor will ask it. Some ask it directly. Most communicate it with a look, a pause, a slight hesitation before they move on to the next topic. The question is, drum roll, you ready? Have you done a deal like this before? And the way you answer that question tells investors more about your competence than your entire deck combined. I can tell you real quick that I actually get this question as a securities attorney all the time because I look young. I look younger than I actually am. People assume that I might be inexperienced because I wear a backwards hat, because I'm relaxed, because I'm easy to talk to, and I'm not your typical lawyer. So they ask, have you done a deal like this before? What's your experience? What's your track record? Here's what a wrong answer sounds like. They ask, have you done a deal like this before? And you say, I've been investing in real estate personally for 5 years. I own a few rentals and I've been studying this asset class really extensively. The deal itself is very strong. Let me show you in the projections. Feel what happened there? What did that feel like to you? The sponsor ran from the question. You ran from the question. You got uncomfortable and you pivoted to their own limited history, and then you immediately changed the subject to the upside, to the deal itself, and the investor noticed all of it. What that answer communicates is this person doesn't have a real answer and they know it. And if they can't handle that question in a sales conversation, how are they going to handle a real problem when it shows up inside the deal? Now, here's what the right answer sounds like. Same question. Have you done a deal like this before? Sponsor says, this is my first syndication, but what I've done is build a team to make sure my investors don't have to rely on my experience alone. My co-GP has closed 14 deals in this asset class. My property manager operated this submarket for 22 years. I've engaged a legal counsel that has structured hundreds of these offerings. My job is to execute the business plan, manage the relationships, and protect your capital. The experience behind me is what makes that possible. That's a completely different conversation. That's transparency. The first sponsor ran from the question. The second sponsor, they owned it and immediately reframed the entire answer in terms of investor protection, not personal defense, not deflection, investor protection. I had a client who struggled with this question for the first several months of his raise. Every time it came up, he stumbled. He hesitated, he tried to minimize it, pivot past it, redirect the numbers, and investors kept going quiet on him. We worked on that answer together until he could deliver it without even thinking. Calm, direct, confident, transparent. No apology for the lack of personal track record. Just a clean explanation of how the structure around him made the track record question irrelevant, meaningless. The first time he delivered it in that way, in a real investor meeting, the investor said, that's actually more reassuring than if you said you'd done this type of deal 10 times. Because you clearly know what you don't know. That is what owning the question gets you. That's what transparency gets you. Practice that answer until it's completely natural. Deliver it without hesitation. Own the fact that you're new and completely reframe it as a reason investors are protected, not a reason to be concerned. The way you handle that one single question that will come up will determine more about how your raise goes than almost anything else you do. Now, I know we've been framing this as first-time sponsors or sponsors without a track record, but this concept also applies to you folks out there that are experienced, that have a track record of success, that have been through economic downturns. You can also use this same frame and build even on top of the fact that you do have a strong track record. You do have the experience, but you also have the right team, the right partners, the right structure. It just helps strengthen everything you've already accomplished, everything you've ever done. All of this still applies. All right, let's pull this all together. Track record is not the barrier between you and a serious capital raise. Investor doubt is the barrier. And investor doubt can be addressed in multiple ways that do not require a single closed deal. Build borrowed credibility. Surround yourself with real experience and make it impossible to miss. Stack the room before you ever walk into a meeting. Number 2, build structural credibility. Structure your offering like a professional operator. Clean documents, proper legal setup, a waterfall that aligns your interests with your investors. Don't cut corners here. It signals everything that investors need to know. Number 3, build knowledge credibility. Know your deal, know your market, know your risk scenarios better than anyone you will ever sit across from. That command communicates confidence more powerfully than any resume ever will. And when that question comes, have you done this before? Answer it with calm confidence. Own it. Reframe it immediately in terms of how you've protected your investors against your own inexperience. The first-time sponsors who raise at scale are not the ones who waited until they had experience. They're the ones who built everything around them to make experience unnecessary. You don't need a track record to raise $10 million. You need to be the safest operator in the room. If you're building your first or your next fund or syndication and want a step-by-step system for doing this the right way, the legal structure, the investor materials, the capital raising framework, I put together the Fund Founders Playbook specifically for sponsors at any stage. It walks you through how to define your investment thesis and investor profile, structure your offering correctly, build the legal and operational infrastructure, design a repeatable, capital raising system and execute your raise with confidence from day one. And best of all, it's free. Link is in the description. Go to SethBradleyESQ.com and grab it. And if you want the structure done right from day one, the PPM, the operating agreement, the subscription docs, all of it built by people who do this every day. That's what we do at Raise Law. You can book a call at www.raise.law. Subscribe for new episodes every week on raising capital, structuring funds, and building a real estate empire that actually lasts. I'll see you in the next one. Until next time, enjoy the journey and raise the bar.